Welcome everyone. Really excited to be doing this presentation. After Dries' note yesterday, I had to redo part of it because there were several concepts he was talking about that were very much connected to what I'm going to be talking about. The title is a bit weird. Also, you've probably noticed that there's no Bram here. Bram was supposed to be doing this together with me, but in the end he wasn't able to make it. So I'll be doing it alone. The title, I've shortened this to the 3P Manifesto, because then I can make this joke that that turns me into C3PO. So I want to say thank you before I get started. So obviously to Bram, because it was conversations with him and with Jamie and several other people at the Drupal Dev Days in Leuven that triggered the idea for this talk. It's something that I've been thinking about for years, but in Leuven it all came together. Bram, you were also there, so you're part of the conversation when we were talking about this stuff. I want to start my story long time ago in a galaxy far away. In 2011, when we organized the first Drupal CXO events. This was I had attended an open space event, and I really loved the way that felt and what you could learn there. So we started doing this for the Drupal community. We did two together with Michaela Kraft from Microsoft, one in Brussels and one in Amsterdam, and those were amazing. And then we tried the third one about business models, and we had a lot of really interesting people to come and talk about business models and Drupal products. But somehow it didn't really click as well as the first two, because this one was about products, and somehow every single discussion that whole weekend started with, what is a product? and it became this circular thing. And I see Deja laughing because we have this in the company all the time also. If you've ever tried to build a product or to think about how you could build a product, you've bumped into this, that this concept of a product is very ephemeral. And I think the reason is because it's a combination of a bunch of associated practices that are loosely coupled, and you don't need all of them to really have a product. But it's this amorphous thing, and a product for you can be something very different for me, and our products can be very different things. Because products are a really varied set of things. So agricultural produce can be products, digital really complex devices can be products, handmade furniture, wooden toy trains, Lego toy trains, IKEA bookshelves, and Drupal platforms. All of these you could talk about as a product. Now, I have got the story about IKEA bookshelves, and it's like the anticipation of the last concept that I want to add to that word cloud that I had up earlier. This is a bookshelf that I built using IKEA furniture. So as you can see, you're not supposed to do it this way, because what I did is I bought several products. And because of the way they were structured, they were actually composable. And I could turn them into like a protection mechanism for our stairs in our home office. Because before that, there was just this open stair. We have kids, not a good recipe. So we built this thing, and you can see also so this is like one product. There's another one on top. These yellow thingies are like sub-products that are composable with this whole world of solutions that IKEA has built, because they have several of these solution worlds that are all composable and fit together and create something very specific. So that brings us to the last concept I want to add, that I think is the most important one, and that is going to be the heart of this talk today, which is bundling. Okay. Now, recently I read this book by Sangeet Paul Chaudhary, recommended. It's people that know me, I recommend a lot of books, but it is an interesting one because it's talking about how AI is changing the economy. Now, I know, we all have this, another AI book. I think that the book is worth. It's about more than just AI or LLMs. It's about how software technology transforms the world by reshuffling how value is made and how value is packaged or bundled. Because he opens his book with the story about containers. Because we're all very familiar with containers, and I mean physical containers, not the software ones. Physical containers completely transformed the world economy. And they're actually a really pretty dumb technology. It's just a metal box, like just a really big metal box. But because they allowed us to package goods, they allowed us to reduce the work that's required to ship stuff. Because before containers, and this is from the Vietnam War. This is like the 1950s, 60s, something like that. So it's very, very recent. Before containers, you had to take crates and everything with a whole bunch of people and move it onto a ship. And every time you moved goods from one device to another, you had to take up that whole stuff and move it all separately. It was a lot of work. But containers did more than just reduce the amount of work you required to move something from one transportation mechanism to another. They also enabled this end-to-end just-in-time economy that we have today. And that really transformed the world. The world we live in today, where you can order something from China and then a couple of days later you've got it here. The world where factories are having other factories contributing semi-fabricated goods to them and shipping all over the world. The world where Trump can start a trade war about goods that are passing the border 5 or 6 times to produce a car. That world was enabled because of containerization and this transformation that was triggered by containers. And with that introduction, I want to open up with this first question to make you ponder a little bit. So what if instead of competing in the website market, where we currently, I think, are positioning ourselves, or most agencies in the Drupal space are positioning themselves today, we would try to compete with the whole SaaS ecosystem that's out there. That's a much, much bigger market. There's a lot more interesting things there. And I think we can bring to that market personalized SaaS applications, which is something that is made possible because of AI or large language models. And even if they're not really smart, still, they're enabling something fundamentally different, I think. And I think there's an opportunity for us, and we're precisely positioned in the perfect place to take advantage of that. Okay. With that introduction, very short word about myself. So I'm Christoph von Tomme. I'm a bioengineer by education. So I love facilitating socio-technical ecosystems like here in the API world and things like that. But I also love in the garden playing with nature technical systems like growing mushrooms and stuff like that. If you're following me on LinkedIn, then you've seen one of these posts. And yes, that's an apple. That's crazy. I'm also the CEO of Pronovix. And Pronovix is a Drupal company, actually already almost 20 years. I went looking. I thought we were already at 20, but we're at 19 years and 6 months that I'm part of the Drupal community. And we've started as a generalist consultancy, and then we specialized in developer portals. And for those that don't know, developer portals is a very specific type of documentation site that plays a key role in the API ecosystem. So like if you're buying an API management solution, you'll also probably have a developer portal. And we've made our business the last 10 years building very specific types of developer portals for very specific use cases for enterprise companies. We have a whole bunch of content. We do a lot of community stuff now in those communities. So I used to do a lot of Drupal events. I do a lot less Drupal events now because we've been focusing the last 10 years on these communities to expand the market for Drupal and to keep a bulwark in the enterprise world where IT people don't always like Drupal and PHP with a Drupal-based developer portal CMS. Back to the story. So I think that AI represents both a threat and an opportunity for Drupal and for agencies. I'm going to assume that most of you either run an agency or are part of an agency, and that you're somewhat involved in thinking about strategy, at least from a perspective of how do I make sure that I'll have a good job going forward, and what's the right company to join. So this conversation, so the session idea started in this incarnation, started, as I already said, at the Drupal Dev Days in Leuven earlier this year. And I was really busy back then with this, the triple threat. I was looking at what was going on in trade, and I was like, that's either a recession or a depression that's being engineered over there. Okay, that's going to be fun. There was also AI, which was this, I don't know what is going to do exactly with all of us. And then there was still the ghost of Drupal 7 that is still haunting the Drupal community. And all of these together was like, this is, it's a nice obstacle. If you're into Stoicism, the obstacle is the road. It's a really nice obstacle to turn into your road. Also, a couple of months before that event, Andrei Karpathy, I hope I pronounced it well, had done this post on X or Twitter, where he started talking about vibe coding, and everybody got really crazy about it. Like, we won't need developers anymore because we can just chat with our LLM and it's going to generate code. It's going to be great. Now, we've all seen where that leads in the meantime. But still, companies had this maybe we don't need to hire agencies anymore because ChatGPT will do it for us. Also, I had been watching the Atlanta keynote from Dries, and he had, I think this is Atlanta, yes. And he had shown this slide, and the thing that really triggered me was this, that price tag, because I know that all of you sell your services for a lot more money than this. And that was kind of scary. And then, and I know that Dries is also very aware of it because he actually wrote a blog post about this, what's going to happen to Drupal agencies? How do we need to transform? And this was yesterday in his keynote. So there's going to be slides. I was working very hard last night, putting the context from yesterday into the deck. But on the mirror side, out there in the SaaS world, the world where we often compete against, like SaaS platforms, this very similar, a complementary set of challenges are popping up, because it's become easier to replicate products, or at least to build a first prototype. Also, with all the layoffs that have happened, there's a lot more developers playing with LLMs to see how far they can go and if they can maybe build a better ... SaaS tool. And so there's this explosion of products. There were already a lot of SaaS products, but now there's going to be even more for the same category. Like if you look at the CRM space, I don't know how you choose in that space. There's so many different CRM tools out there, and it's just increasing. And there's some really interesting ones now that are using LLMs for helping with specific processes. It keeps exploding, and there's more and more and more of these tools. Now, that is an opportunity for Drupal because I hope that we all agree with this in this room. Don't look at the picture, it's AI generated, it doesn't make sense. The text. So LLMs are not going to get us to artificial general intelligence, right? I think we're all already clear on that. Maybe there's some combination with other technologies, but personally, I don't hold my breath. I think it's at least another 10 years, if not more. And we've been here in this place several times now already in the AI hype cycle. Doesn't mean that AI is not useful, because even robots that are not really smart can be transformative for production processes. If you look at factories today that are starting to use robots, they don't just take a person and replace it with a robot. they put a robot in their process and then figure out how the process has to change to make that robot safe and effective and efficient, because that thing costs a lot of money. So you can, I think similarly, there's an opportunity to create an advantage using large language models, even if they're really stupid, by thinking properly about how do you restructure everything around them, so that you take advantage of those areas where they're really, really good, or where they're doing something that otherwise was not possible, and then transform your whole process around that. And that way you can create an AI native organization that is something new and that can really compete well in the market. The way to do that is to create constraints around these systems, so that they can, around the robots, so that they can function safely and effectively. In practice, in factories, there's often cages around robots because they can be very dangerous. And like if somebody's like wandering around and by accident is in the wrong place when that really big arm comes around with some really heavy stuff, then it protects people from that. Similarly, and Dries was actually mentioning this, so I put these were some of the slides I wanted to bring in from Dries' note. There's all these constraints that we have in Drupal, like content structure, access control, workflows, a lot of these graphical user interfaces that we have, that if you're purely building a web application from scratch, can be like neutral, maybe a little bit positive, or sometimes downright negative, because you have all these interfaces that you don't want to expose to customers, and still you got them, and you have to deal with them, and maybe they cause problems because you did not want to have an interface for something. But all of these things now, I think, are becoming constraints that are giving Drupal like an amazing advantage out there as a platform for taking advantage of these things that LLMs are really good at. Because these constraints, if we repurpose them a little bit, and this is a trick. I told you I'm a bioengineer. There'll be some nature references. Nature does this all the time. You have if you have something interesting, you can repurpose it for something completely different. And I think similarly, we can repurpose the constraints that we have in Drupal to make AI more safe and more powerful. So this vibe coding, for prototyping can be very powerful. For production, but vibe configuring, on the other hand, where you're using a constraint system like Drupal, I think can be much more powerful than vibe coding for building web applications that will be maintainable, secure, etc., etc. But there's more. So this was the part that Dries was already talking about, and I'm going to take this off because it's a bit hot. I'll take this dork thing also off. So there's more. Because there's this other thing in nature, when the environment changes, different systems, different creatures get an advantage. Like if you have an area that goes from a rainy place to a very dry place, you get different plants that become dominant in there. And I think similarly, AI is also changing the cost environment in which we live. There's certain costs of doing software that are changing. Some of them are becoming larger, some of them are becoming smaller. So I've tried to list out, and this is just from the top of my head. Probably if you see any costs that are missing, please let me know. But these are some of the costs that I think, or that I see in software projects that we are incurring, architecture development, etc. And the current cost structure is, I think, really well fit for monolithic SaaS products like what we see out there in the application world, and systems with plugin platforms. I'll explain in a moment what that means, but I think that there's a fundamental difference between the way the way modularity works in WordPress or mobile apps or a bunch of other things. Like Linux has composable modularity, Android has plugin modularity. Do you understand what I mean? So like plugin modularity, I'll explain it now. So plugin modularity is when you have a sandbox in which an application works in isolation and it doesn't interact too much with all the other stuff. Composable modularity, like in Drupal, is where everything connects with everything. Like you turn on views and you've got views everywhere. You add taxonomy and now you see it popping up all over the place. This kind of modularity is very different, and it has a huge impact on the complexity of the applications that we can build and the adaptivity of the applications that we can build. So if you're trying to build a product that just does one job for everybody the same, Drupal is not necessarily the right tool. If you want an core application that people can customize and do something extra with, Drupal could be really, really powerful. So that's kind of the thing. Now, the current cost structure, and this is my hypothesis. I'm not sure if it's true yet. Though this is true. Like we see it in the world out there, monolithic platforms have won. Or they're everywhere. Like marketplaces typically are this structure. My hypothesis is that maybe, very maybe, because of AIs, this could flip, and that composable modularity will become more important. Continue with the story. So, because before even all of that, there's some big changes happening in our cost environment today. So first one, cost of sovereignty and the cost of satisficing. I'll explain in a second what that means. So first, sovereignty. We're in a very different world than 10 years ago. Software products, like SaaS products that are run on an American server, for a lot of organizations don't cut it anymore. Or there has to be like very specific rules and there's data residency and all of that stuff. I think we've all grown a little bit tired with the speed roadmap bus that SaaS tools take us onto. What I mean with this, like the speed, I'm dating myself. You've seen this movie? Yes, okay. So, you have to keep pushing the gas else the bus explodes. SaaS products are a little bit like that, like monolithic SaaS products, because they have to keep evolving. And like, even if you don't really, like as a customer, you don't really know how your front page is going to look tomorrow, because maybe they'll change the algorithm and now they've got some fancy short movies that are going to mess up everything, but they can make more money with it. Like when you're using a SaaS product, a monolithic SaaS product, you're at the mercy of the product owner of that product. And then that brings us to enshittification. I hope this is not counted as swearing. It's in the, well, anyway, or encrapification is a nicer way of saying apparently. Which is this like when almost all SaaS tools want to be platforms, because if you have a platform, you got a better ecosystem and so on and so on, and that puts them on the road of one side's improvement against the other side until nobody wins anymore, and you have you lost a good platform and you have to move again to some other place. And we've gone through all of this ourselves. Like there's a reason why I'm no longer on Twitter, and that's the reason. Also, spaces that we live in need to be organic. What I mean with that, there was this experiment. There was in Missouri. I'm blanking on the name, but it was one of the inspirations for this book, A Pattern Language. I don't know if you're familiar with this one. It's a beautiful book, great concept. It's been used in software because it was the start. This from the 70s. It was the start of pattern languages, and that brought us a bunch of other things in software. But in that book, he argues that to build a living space, like something that is going to be organic, and I'm paraphrasing, it's been a while that I read it, but to build a place that we're going to feel good in as humans, you can't just copy paste one pattern to the next, because if you have a house at the end of a row of houses, it might get a lot of sun on the south, and then maybe you need something to keep the sun out from like overheating your living room and stuff like this. where the argument goes that instead of just copy-pasting design from one place to the next, what happened here and what actually led to lots of really bad stuff, and in the end they broke down this whole block of apartments. That's part of the story. So instead of doing this copy-pasta of construction, it's better to have this pattern language that you're applying to the local context that you're building something in, and that it will transform actually what you're going to create, and it's going to be much more livable for people to live in. Something very similar is happening in online spaces, I think. The websites that a small organization needs versus the website that a large organization needs can be very different. You might be using the same tools, but you'll be using certain patterns to create something that's uniquely fit for that one organization. Similarly with applications. And today we're kind of stuck with a one-size-fits-all application. And if you no longer fit, you just have to move to the next application. That's kind of like where we are today. Okay, one other rant. Now, I was talking about cost. And so I already talked about the shifts in costs that are happening regardless of AI. There's a couple of shifts that are happening because of AI. And I've just made up something. I'm not sure if this is true. I don't know how much it is. I've tried to quantify it, but I think that there's certain parts of the cost structure of building software that are going to become cheaper, or that can be made a lot cheaper. And there's probably some that are actually going to go up. I don't know yet exactly which ones, but it gives an idea. Now, my hypothesis, and this needs to be tested, is that because of the shift in cost and because of these two here, that we might be changing the regime for modularity that is the most the best fit for building applications for organizations. And that open source personalized solutions, the things that we built in Drupal, and composable platforms like Drupal, actually will become lower cost than the other platforms that are out there. It's a big, hairy hypothesis. I'm not sure if it's true, but if it's true, it could be really, really, really big. Because, this is the spiel about composable versus plugin modularity. There's a biology metaphor. Because this is tissue, I think it's human tissue, that there, I think it's a representation of the microbiome in the intestines. In ourselves, in every one of you, there is both types of modularity, even today. You have composable modularity of your genes that are helping you to be a unique individual that is able to adapt and do all kinds of weird stuff. And you have a plug-in modularity in your intestines where there's lots and lots of bacteria that help you to digest all the weird stuff that you eat. If you're vegetarian, your bacteria change. If you eat meat, your bacteria change. If you eat something weird once a year, your bacteria will be changing. And this is helping you to adapt to what's going on. But it's a specific type of it's a difference in modularity. And both actually complement each other. Okay. Now, Drupal's composable modularity, I think, is a result of the community. I think it's because we have this distributed ecosystem where there's no one single organization that is controlling all of Drupal and that is providing the core that is probably composable and then let everybody do the plugin stuff. That we have this kind of different modularity that's pervasive in our community. And as I think I already hinted at it, that composable modularity allows for more complex behavior. And complexity often is seen as something bad, but actually it can be something good because complexity is also what makes a system adaptive. So complex adaptive systems, if you're, any chaos theory and complexity science, crazy people like me? No. So if you go out there reading about complex adaptive systems, you'll find some of this stuff. And not about composable modularity, but about how these organisms adapt to their environment through enabling constraints and governing constraints and so on. Okay. So I already mentioned this, that we and multicellular organisms combine these two with each other, and that makes something different possible. Okay, enough with biology, I hope. I think this was the last biology slide. Back to our costs. We don't need to just take what's going to happen to us. We can also actively act on how the cost structure changes. Because we can, and we already are changing how AI is interacting with our project. And that is, I think, already changing some of the cost structures, like recipes, some of the things like what's being done using assistants and so on in Drupal, I think is already changing some of these cost structures. But we can do more. We can look at this and deliberately try to change the cost structure of projects. And to do that, I think we need to change how we deliver value. Now, I really loved this slide from Atlanta that Dries showed. I love the concept of like different worlds, like what you have in Lego, where there's the Star Wars universe, where there's lots and lots of different things that are coherent with each other, that build this different universe that you can combine together to do interesting things in Lego. And there's lots of other universes like that. I think the reason why I liked it is because for me, it made me think of like a world where there's like a whole library of recipes about a very specific application, kind of like what we're building for developer portals. This is where it all comes together, where you can have recipes for different features or different things somebody might want to do when they're building a specific type of application, that are composable and that you can like put together as a sort of recipe language pattern. And for me, that was like, yes, because I think there's an opportunity here to create a new type of product, which it's not just a product that's inside of the box. It's a product that is like, you have a starter piece, and then you have this library of plugin stuff, like this whole world of things that you can add to it. Some of which is compatible with other worlds, like the Lego, the regular faces, they're all still compatible. You can still have the same, these standard bricks, they're still compatible between the different worlds. But it opens up this possibility to create like a language to specifically address the needs of your customer, rather than to give them an out-of-the-box thing like, here you go and good luck with it. But you can actually go into a conversation with your customer and to build something that is going to be specifically addressing their needs. So I think, I know that Dries made this parallel, said like site templates are the worlds. I don't agree with that. I think that site templates are the door to the worlds. And I can imagine a marketplace where you have site templates that have like inside of them a recipe library that you can get access to, that gives you, that gives customers the ability to further extend, and then maybe come and ask like, okay, I need some help with this other thing, and that we can create a new type of business model around this that is going to be scalable, that is going to be global, that is going to allow us to compete with hyper-specialized tools that are one-trick ponies today, and build something that is much more personalizable using all the constraints of our ecosystem. And I think that also, I think Dries wants, I need to talk with him about this still, but I think one of the main reasons why the site template marketplace is something we want in the community is because we want to bring in more designers into the community. But I think that design could potentially, not sure yet, but I think that with Drupal Canvas, design could become a plugin modularity piece that you can plug in not in a single site template, but across site templates. So that you have different site templates for specific market applications, like developer portals, like CRM, and so on and so on. And then you can compose on top, you can add on top of that site templates that address or that transform those into a beautiful thing. But you don't need to have a design for a single application necessarily. I don't think that we should be coupling these two together, but I need to talk about this with you. Okay, a lot of philosophical stuff so far. Let's talk a little bit at the world that's already here, because this world of specialized applications built on top of Drupal already exists today. There's this quote, I'm sure you knew I was going to make that quote. The future is already here today. There's companies like us, like Open Social, and several others that have chosen to specialize in a very, very specific narrow field. Because, and this is my belief, I think that vertical specialization is not optional. I think it's a matter of survival. I think that the world of traditional Drupal players with local generalists, I don't know. I think I had that slide in the beginning of Unshuffle with you want to stay above the algorithm. I think that if you're a generalist, you're under the algorithm. You're like the Uber driver who's being told by the machine where to go. If you don't want to become an Uber driver, if you want to be the one who's creating the Uber platform or something maybe friendlier and nicer for your community, then I think that you need to become a product specialist that is acting globally, but in a very specific narrow niche. Also, you need to think about what sector you're in, because there's this preconception, like there's a reason why we as a company, we're not all that much involved in the Drupal community last 10 years. Last 10 years. Our customers don't care about open source. They see open source like their enterprise. The companies, they see open source as free stuff that they can get. And they don't really necessarily want to contribute. There's some really nice individuals that are different. There's some exceptions. But most of the time, an enterprise just sees open source as free stuff. I know that in the not-for-profit sector and in the government sector, that's different. And then open source and free open source is seen as a moral good, as something that is improving the world and that they want to invest in. And that actually gives you a marketing advantage. So depending on who you're targeting, if you're targeting NGOs and not-for-profits and governments, or if you're targeting enterprise, you might want to adapt your marketing strategy and how you're in the market. What we've learned is that this is a story. This is how I tell customers how to choose if they want to work with us. So there's the roadmap bus, which is where you have a SaaS product and you just step on the bus and it takes you somewhere. There's the drive yourself, like where an internal team is building in-house and you have full control over where you're going. And then there's the taxi, but you also own everything. And there's a taxi where you just step in the car and it takes you where you need to go. We're the middle one. We're the taxi right now. And depending on, so you might need to think about, do you want to provide this kind of taxi service or do you want to create some sort of bus service? So even if you have a SaaS, even after all the things I said about monolithic SaaS being maybe something from the past and that we can compete against them, there's still the possibility to choose between these two. So you could choose the roadmap bus where if customers are happy to follow along and it's not that important or strategically important for their organization, then you could choose a sort of SaaS formula. Or you can take the taxi formula where you really go the last mile and you help your customers get there. What is important regardless of what you do, you need to try to make your customizations not one-offs. We work with companies that have very specific requirements. It's not always easy. But trying to figure out how can you standardize requirements so that you get a library of reusable components is essential when you're going this path. And product and service models need to be symbiotic. They need to be fit to each other. Jeff Walpole had the saying years ago, distributions are the world's most expensive lead generation tool. Yeah, so it can be very expensive to have an open source product if you don't have something fit around that to make it commercially viable. Okay, there's a lot of, right? I think I could spend a whole afternoon talking about this and do like separate discussions. I'll go quickly through the last pieces. A lot of what we need to make this world of composable products, these post-product products, viable is already there. Before recipes, when you were trying to build a product in Drupal, it was kind of like doing Lego with glue, where you were like sticking pieces together, and then when you had to like change a piece, you had to like pull off the glue and try to unglue the thing that you had created. With recipes, we're already in a better place. There's still some gaps. There are some issues around like safely evolving and updating config, like to make sure that you can do full config validation. I was talking about this with Wim Leers. There are still some gaps there, but when we're getting closer to it, and there's going to be a talk about this later today, I think. Yes, later today. Also, probably would be nice if we would be able to separate between the 3 layers of config. What is part of Drupal CMS, what's part of your platform, and what is the config that your customers are changing themselves. Also, and this is probably the most important part, we need maps of all the possible things customers might want to do and how to do them. I have ideas about this. If you're interested in doing some of what I've shown here and you want to be part of all of this, then come and talk with me about it. It's not enough time right now, but we need this kind of idea of what is possible and what customers might ask for in a specific application setting. So with that, I'd like to end on a call for joining us. I think there's an opportunity for the Drupal community to make a hit list of all, and not just the existing SaaS applications that are out there, but of highly specific SaaS applications that have some public-facing components and some internal-facing components, and then some logic that binds it all together. And that does something very unique in that space, where this composable modularity that we have becomes a power tool that allows us to create a site for one organization that is specifically fit for their business model, what they're trying to do, and so on. So I just threw some ideas on here. There's developer portals, obviously. There's online communities, although that is like what Open Social is in, although that's been shifting a little bit. But there's all these other things, and these are just a few. There's many, many, many more. And I would like to invite you to join us to build these triple P products. Also, we tried to make a manifesto, me and Bram, like we had dinner together, we were like brainstorming a bit, but we didn't get there. I think also manifesto should not be built between 2 people. I think it should be done in a community. So I would love to work with all of you in maybe this conference, maybe on some of the next conferences. I don't have a BOF this conference, but probably on some of the future ones, I'll make sure that there is one, to work on this manifesto together so that we can define this together and create the infrastructure that allows us to build businesses like this, to go and compete with the SaaS world as a whole, to expand our market much, much, much bigger than what currently we're even dreaming of. Like if you're not looking at the website market, but you're looking at the SaaS application market, there's a huge market out there that we could all be very, very well off in, collaborating and working together on. With that, I want to wrap up or finalize with a QR code if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, if you haven't yet. And I've created this Slack channel today, the 3P products on Drupal Slack. There's nothing in there yet. There's just an opening message. Jamie and Bram are already in there. Happy for you to join, and hope to have many conversations. Also, I think there's a little bit of time for maybe one question. Yeah. I'll open up for questions with that. Thank you very much.